My combine operator didn't find her in the wheat. This meeting changed two fates forever. Write down what city you are from and how old you are. We want to know our listeners better. Tony Miller hadn't spoken since his wife left. Not that he couldn't, he just didn't want to. What's the point of words if they can't bring back what's most precious? This happened 5 years ago. His wife, Stephanie, couldn't handle the silence in their house. She couldn't handle his silence after the loss of their son. She left for another man, leaving behind their daughter, Jenny. Jenny was 7 years old at the time. "Daddy, why don't you talk?" Jenny asked him at first. Tony just stroked her head. What could he say? That the words had run out on the day they buried their boy, Jimmy? That his throat tightened every time he tried to make a sound? Gradually, his daughter got used to it and began to understand him without words, by his gaze, by his gestures, by his facial expressions. They developed their own way of communicating. Tony worked as a combine operator on a co-op farm. It was a suitable job for a silent man. You sit alone in the cab, harvesting the crops, thinking your own thoughts. Neighbors felt sorry for him. "Tony, you need to get married. A child needs a mother." He just shook his head. "What kind of wife? Who needs a mute guy with someone else's kid? Jenny is growing up to be a wild child," the women would say. "Her dad's quiet. Who's she supposed to talk to?" And it was true, Jenny became withdrawn and shy. At school, she had a hard time answering questions and didn't make friends. At home, she did her homework, helped with chores, and went to bed early. They lived a quiet, modest life. Tony earned a decent living. They owned their house and had a small farm. They had everything they needed, but there was no joy. In August, they started harvesting the wheat. Tony woke up at 4 a.m. as usual. He had breakfast in silence, checked his combine, and drove to the field. He loved his work. In the combine's cab, he felt useful and needed. The machine obeyed him, and the wheat lay in neat windrows. It was a beautiful sight. The day was hot. By noon, the sun was so strong the air was shimmering over the field. Tony stopped to get a drink of water and wipe the sweat, and then he saw something white about 50 yards away from the combine, in the unharvested wheat. At first, he thought it was a forgotten sack or a rag, but the white spot was too big. He turned off the engine, climbed out of the cab, and went to take a look. Lying among the stalks was a woman young, about 25. Her light hair was matted, her face was pale, and there was dried blood on her lips. Her dress was torn, and she had bruises on her arms. She had been badly beaten and left in the field. Tony knelt down beside her and checked her pulse. It was weak but there. She was breathing faintly, alive. But she wouldn't last long without help. He carefully lifted the woman into his arms. She was as light as a feather, all bones and skin. He carried her to the combine. It was cooler in the cab. He gently laid her on the seat and gave her some water. The woman opened her eyes, blue and frightened. She saw the stranger and recoiled. "Don't be scared," Tony wanted to say, but all that came out was a hoarse whisper. The woman understood he couldn't speak and calmed down a bit. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for finding me." Tony nodded and gestured. "You need to go to the hospital, to a doctor." "No," the woman said, scared. "Don't take me to the hospital, he'll find me there." "Who is he?" Tony didn't ask. It was obvious, a husband or boyfriend. He had beaten her and thrown her in a field like an unwanted thing. "I don't have any money," the woman continued. "I have nowhere to go. He still has my papers." Tears streamed down her bruised face. Tony took out a handkerchief and wiped her tears, gesturing. "Come to my place. You can rest up and then we'll see." You'll really help? We're strangers." He nodded. Of course he would help. How could he leave a beaten woman in a field? They arrived home in the evening. Jenny was doing her homework in the kitchen. She saw her dad with a stranger and was surprised. "Dad, who is this?" Tony explained with gestures. "I found her in the field, she was beaten. We're helping." Jenny nodded, used to understanding her dad without words. "What's your name?" she asked the woman. "Helena." "And I'm Jenny." Come on in, have a seat. You're in a little pain, but you'll be okay. Jenny brought some antiseptic and bandages and helped clean her wounds. The girl was serious, mature for her age, and knew how to take care of people. Are you going to stay with us? She asked. I don't know, maybe for a few days if that's okay. Until I figure out what to do next. Of course it's okay, right, Dad? Tony nodded. There was plenty of space in the house. They put Helen in the room that had been empty since his wife left. They brought her clean clothes, food, and tea. Thank you, Helen said. You are very kind people. Tony waved his hand. No big deal. Anyone would have helped. But not just anyone. He knew that. Many would have walked past, not wanting to get involved in other people's problems. Helen lay there for a week recovering. The bruises faded and the wounds healed. Tony brought her medicine and Jenny took care of her. She's like a mom, the girl told her dad. She's so nice and gentle. And it was true, Helen was wonderfully warm. She talked to Jenny about school, about books, and helped her with her homework. The girl blossomed before their eyes. Jenny, you're so smart, Helen marveled. You solve problems like they're nothing. Can you solve problems too? I can. I was a teacher. Was a teacher? What happened? Helen grew somber. It's a long story that didn't end well. She didn't talk about her past anymore. Tony didn't pry. Everyone has their secrets. By the end of the week, Helen was back on her feet, helping around the house, cooking and cleaning. The house came alive, filled with the woman's warmth. Dad, can Helen stay with us? Jenny asked. Tony shrugged. It wasn't his decision to make. Helen was a grown woman. She knew what to do. But secretly he hoped she would stay. It was good to have her in the house, so peaceful and cozy. But he knew she wouldn't. A young, beautiful woman would find a better place than a mute farmer's house. After 2 weeks, Helen announced she was leaving. Thank you for everything. You saved my life, but I can't keep taking advantage of your kindness. Where will you go? Jenny asked. To the city. It's easier to find a job there. Will you leave your address? Why? It's better to just forget about me. We won't forget, the girl cried. I don't want you to leave. Helen hugged Jenny and kissed the top of her head. I don't want to either, but I have to. Tony saw her off at the bus and gave her money for the bus and for a little while. Thank you, Helen said. If it weren't for you. He nodded and waved. The bus pulled away, taking another person he cared about out of his life. At home, Jenny cried into her pillow. Tony sat beside her, stroking her head, understanding his daughter. He was sad too. For a short time there was a woman in the house, a real woman, kind, caring, and loving. And now they were alone again. Friends, we're just a few dozen subscribers away from our goal. If you like the story, please subscribe. It helps us a lot to keep making these stories. Only 1% of listeners subscribe to the channel. Thank you to each and every one of you. Life returned to its old routine. Tony worked and Jenny went to school. They talked even less than before. Helen had taken a piece of the warmth with her. Dad, do you think Helen remembers us? His daughter would sometimes ask. Tony would shrug. Who knows? People forget and move on. The fall passed quietly, and the winter was cold and snowy. Jenny caught a cold and was sick for 2 weeks. Tony took time off work to care for his daughter. It was hard without a woman in the house. He couldn't make soup, iron dresses, or braid her hair. He did his best, but he knew his daughter was missing a mother's care. In the spring, Jenny went to 5th grade. The new teacher was young and strict. Jenny was afraid of her. She yells at us, his daughter complained. She says we're stupid. Tony frowned. He didn't like his child being yelled at. He went to the school to talk to the teacher. But how could he talk if he couldn't speak? He wrote a note. Please don't yell at my daughter. She's trying. The teacher read it and smirked. Your daughter is behind. If you don't like my method, move her to another school. It was rude and unpleasant. Tony left feeling upset. At home, Jenny was crying over her textbooks. I can't do it, Dad. I don't get this math. Tony sat beside her and tried to explain with gestures, but math wasn't his strong suit. By the end of the school year, it was clear. Jenny might have to repeat the year. Her grades were bad and her knowledge was weak. What should I do? Her dad worried. A tutor is too expensive. And where would I find one in this town? Summer came and with it vacation time. Tony decided to take his daughter to the city. Maybe he could find a specialist who could help her catch up on her studies. In the city, they went to a school and talked to the principal. We can recommend a teacher, the principal said. She's young but very good. She works with difficult kids. She gave them an address and a phone number. Tony found the house, went up to the 3rd floor, and rang the doorbell. The door was opened by a familiar woman. Helen. They stared at each other in silence. Tony couldn't believe it. Is that really her? Tony, Helen exclaimed. And Jenny. How happy I am to see you. She hugged Jenny and kissed her all over. The girl hung on her like a real daughter on her mother. Helen, we missed you so much. Where have you been? I was working, going back to school and getting my papers back. So now you're a teacher? Yes. At a school for at-risk teens. I help those who are falling behind. Tony took out a note he had prepared. Jenny is struggling in school. Can you help? Helen read it and nodded. Of course I can. Come in, sit down and tell me what happened. Jenny told her about the school, the mean teacher, and the confusing math. I see, Helen said. You just have gaps in your knowledge. That's fixable. Really? Of course it's real. It's what I specialize in. They agreed that Jenny would come for lessons 3 times a week during the summer. Helen would charge a small fee, but would help the girl prepare for the new school year. All summer, Jenny went to the city to see Helen. She would come back happy and full of new knowledge. Dad, Helen explains things so well. I finally understand fractions. And we read books too. Helen says you have to read a lot. She even taught me how to make borscht. Tony listened to his daughter's stories and was overjoyed. Jenny was blossoming and becoming more confident. But most importantly, she was happy again. The sparkle that had disappeared after her mother left was back in her eyes. By the end of the summer, Jenny had caught up significantly. She could solve problems that had seemed impossible before and read books and retell their stories. You're ready for 5th grade, Helen said. You'll do great. Can I keep coming to see you? Of course you can. I'd love that. In September, Jenny went to school. The new teacher was nicer than the old one. Most importantly, Jenny was ready for her classes. She got A's on her first tests. At home, she proudly showed her notebooks to her dad. Tony smiled and stroked his daughter's head. Helen had worked a miracle. She had given a child back her faith in herself. Every weekend, Jenny went to the city, officially for extra lessons, but in reality to see the person she loved most. Dad, why don't you and Helen get married? His daughter asked one day. Tony was surprised. Where did that come from? She's a good person and she likes you, I can tell. How do you know? She asks about you all the time. How's your work? How's your health? Tony thought about it. It was true. Helen was always interested in his life and greeted him like family. But could a beautiful young woman really love a mute farmer from a small town? Dad, do you love her? Jenny persisted. Tony froze. Did he love her? Of course he did. He had loved her since the day he found her in the wheat field. But he had never admitted it even to himself. Then tell her. His daughter insisted. Maybe she loves you too. How can I tell her? I can't talk. You can use gestures or write a note. Simple childish logic. Jenny was right, he had to try. The next weekend, Tony went to the city with his daughter, officially to pick her up early, but in reality to talk to Helen. Jenny smiled slyly when she saw her dad. Helen, Dad wants to talk to you. I'm going for a walk. And she ran off, leaving them alone. Helen and Tony sat at the table, drinking tea in silence. Finally, he took out a note he had prepared. Thank you for helping my daughter. She's a different person. Jenny's a wonderful girl, Helen replied. She's smart and kind. You raised her well. It's hard to do it alone. I know. Another note. I need a woman's touch, a woman's heart. Helen blushed. Tony put down a third, most important note. We need you. I need you. There was a long silence. Helen looked out the window, thinking about her answer. I think about you too, she finally said. I think about you often. Tony's heart beat faster. But we're so different. You're from the country, and I'm from the city. You're quiet and I love to talk. He wrote, opposites attract. Helen smiled. Maybe. But there's another problem. What? My ex-husband. The one who beat me. He could find me and hurt you. Tony shrugged. He wasn't afraid of anyone. He could protect his family. Think about it, Helen said. It's a serious decision. Tony thought all week. He weighed it, analyzed it. On one hand, there was risk. Helen was right, they were different. Plus, her past could cause problems. On the other hand, there was Jenny. The girl had blossomed next to Helen, becoming more confident and happier. And he? How long had it been since he had felt needed, not just as a provider but as a man? On Friday, he made his decision. He went to the city and found Helen at home. He silently handed her a note. I want to be with you no matter what. As Helen read, tears rolled down her cheeks. Are you sure? He nodded. I am. What if there are problems? He shrugged. Problems can be solved. Tony, Helen whispered. I love you too. She hugged him and held him close. For the first time in years, he felt like a whole man. When Jenny returned and saw them hugging, she screamed with joy. Hooray! Now we'll be a real family. Helen moved to the country a month later. She got a job as a math teacher at the local school. The salary was small, but she was with the people she loved. They had a quiet wedding without a fuss, at the city hall with witnesses. Tony signed his name instead of saying his vows. I do, he wrote in the box. I love her and will cherish her. Jenny was a witness for the bride and beamed with happiness. They lived as a family of 3. The house was filled with laughter, conversation, and a woman's care. Helen turned out to be a wonderful homemaker. She was a great cook and sewed and knitted. Tony felt like he was standing behind a stone wall. Most importantly, Jenny had transformed. The withdrawn girl had turned into a cheerful, outgoing child. Mom, tell me about school, she would ask in the evenings. Mom. Helen had become a mother to a child who wasn't hers. Tony was grateful to her to the point of tears. They lived happily for 6 months, but in March what they had feared came to pass. Helen's ex-husband, Val, showed up. Tony stood in the middle of the yard and couldn't believe it. He was alone again. He had lost the person he cared about most all over again. Dad, what's going to happen now? Jenny cried. He hugged his daughter and held her tight. He was about to cry himself, but he held it in. Men don't cry, especially when a child is nearby. But inside he was burning with helplessness. How could this happen? They had just started to live a normal life as a family, and everything fell apart again. Jenny cried into his shirt. Mom's not coming back. She's not coming back at all. Tony stroked her head, but he couldn't answer. What could he say? That she would come back? What if she didn't? That she wouldn't? Then his daughter would lose all hope. He gestured. I don't know. We'll wait. But what if he kills her? Jenny whispered. Remember she told us how he beat her? Tony flinched. It was true, Val was dangerous. He had come with a knife and made threats. He was capable of anything. But Helen had gone with him to protect her family. She had sacrificed herself for their safety. He had to do something. But what? Go to the police? What would he tell the police? That his wife had left with her ex-husband? That wasn't a crime. And how could he explain it if he couldn't talk? In the evening, Tony paced around the house like a caged animal. He couldn't sit still. He would go to the window, then sit down at the table, then get up again. Jenny was doing her homework, but it was clear her mind was elsewhere. Every 5 minutes, she would lift her head and listen. Was that a car? Dad, can I not go to school tomorrow? She asked before bed. Tony shook his head. You have to go. Life goes on. But what if Mom comes back and I'm not here? He gestured that if she came back, she would wait until evening. But he didn't believe Helen would come back. Val wouldn't let her go willingly, and she wouldn't be able to get away by force. He didn't sleep that night. He lay there staring at the ceiling thinking. He had to go to the city and find Helen. But where could he look? The city was big. Val could have taken her anywhere. And besides, what could he do? A mute man against a criminal with a knife. But sitting around and doing nothing was impossible either. In the morning, he saw Jenny off to school, took a day off work, and got on the bus to the city. First, he went to Helen's old address. Maybe Val had brought her home. But the apartment was empty, and the neighbors knew nothing. Why are you asking? The neighbor wondered. Helen hasn't lived here for a long time. Tony gestured. I'm looking for her. It's important to find her. You can't talk. I'm mute. He nodded. Oh, you poor thing. But what do you need Helen for? He took out his driver's license and showed her. Her husband. Her husband, the neighbor said, delighted. Oh, that's so good. We thought she was all alone after that horrible thing. What horrible thing? He wrote on a piece of paper. When her husband beat her. It was awful. We called the police, but he left and never came back. And Helen was in the hospital. Do you know where he might be? I don't know. They said he had some kind of business, but where? I don't know. Tony went to other places where Helen might be. The school where she worked. They didn't know anything. The stores where she bought groceries. No one had seen her either. By evening, he realized it was pointless. The city was big and he was alone. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack. He returned home upset. Jenny was waiting on the porch. Dad, did you find her? He shook his head. What now? The girl cried. Tony hugged his daughter, not knowing what to do now. A week passed, then another. Helen was still gone. Jenny struggled in school, ate poorly and slept badly. She was always waiting for her mom. Dad, what if she forgot about us? What if she decided to stay with that guy? Tony shook his head. Helen couldn't have forgotten them. She loved them for real. But time went on and she was still gone. Maybe something had really changed? Maybe Val had managed to convince her to stay? A month later, a police officer came to see Tony. Tony Miller? Your wife filed a complaint against you. She writes that you forced her to marry you and threatened her. She's demanding a divorce. Tony's heart leaped. Helen was alive. But she's writing that he forced her? He took out his notebook and wrote, It's not true. She left willingly with her ex-husband. Yeah, heard that one before. The officer smirked. All the men say that, and the women complain. Can I see the complaint? Sure. Tony read it and went cold. The complaint was in Helen's handwriting. But the words were strange and angry. I'm asking for a divorce from Tony Miller. He forced me to live with him and threatened to hurt me. I'm afraid for my life. At the bottom, a signature that was undoubtedly Helen's. You get it now, right? The officer said. File for divorce and don't bother your wife anymore. He left, leaving Tony completely baffled. Helen had written the complaint herself, so she was alive and well. But why such words? Why the lies? And then he understood. Val must have forced her, probably threatened her. Helen had written it to protect him and Jenny. He showed the complaint to his daughter. She read it and started to cry. Dad, Mom doesn't love us. She does, but she was forced to write it. But why doesn't she run away? Why doesn't she come back? Tony shrugged. He didn't know. Maybe she couldn't run away. Maybe she was too scared. Another month passed and the divorce papers came. He was officially single again, but in his heart, he still considered Helen his wife. He loved her, waited for her, and hoped. A year passed. Helen was still gone. Tony and Jenny lived a quiet, gloomy life. The house was empty without a woman's warmth. Jenny was doing well in school. Helen had laid a strong foundation of knowledge, but the girl was sad and withdrawn, and often asked about her mom. Dad, maybe we should go see her, find her, talk to her? Tony would shake his head. If Helen had wanted to come back, she would have come back on her own. So she didn't want to. Or she couldn't. But what if she's sick or being held somewhere? Maybe. But how would we know? How can we check? At school, a new teacher, an older, kind woman, took Jenny under her wing. The girl is so sad, she told Tony at a parent-teacher meeting. She's always asking about her mom. He nodded and gestured. I know, but there's nothing I can do. You should get married again. A child needs a mother. He shook his head. He didn't need another wife. He had a wife, Helen. Even if she was far away and they weren't together, he had her. You still love her? He nodded. Of course he loves her. Then find her. If your love is real, you'll find her. But where could he look? 6 months earlier, he had gotten Val's address from a friend. He had gone to the city and watched his house. Val lived alone. Helen wasn't with him. Neighbors said. He was with some woman, but not for long. Then she disappeared. Where did she disappear to? What happened to her? Tony was tormented by the unknown. He didn't sleep at night, thinking of the worst. What if Val had killed Helen? What if she wasn't alive anymore? But in the daytime, he would push those thoughts away. She was alive. She had to be alive. Otherwise, he would have felt it. In the winter, an unexpected meeting happened. Tony went to the district center for some errands, went into a store and saw a familiar face. The cashier from the city, the one where Helen used to buy groceries. Oh, the cashier said, recognizing him. You're Helena's husband, right? He nodded. How is she? I haven't seen her in a while. Tony took out his notebook and wrote. I'm looking for her. Do you know where she might be? I don't know, but I saw her at the hospital recently. At the mental hospital. His heart went cold. At the mental hospital? Why? I don't know. She was acting strange, dirty, and disheveled. She was saying something about a husband who was holding her captive. When was this? A month ago, maybe a little more. Tony thanked the woman and drove home. He thought about what he had heard the whole way. Helen was in a mental hospital. What had happened to her? Had Val driven her to a nervous breakdown? He had to go check. But how could he get into the hospital? How could he explain what he wanted if he couldn't talk? At home, he told Jenny about the meeting. The girl put her hands to her head. Dad, Mom is sick, we have to save her. How do we save her? Go to the hospital and get her. They won't let you. I'm not officially a relative. Who is a relative? No one. We're divorced. Jenny started to cry. So Mom will just stay in the hospital? Tony hugged his daughter, not knowing what to say. But that night he made a decision. He would go to the hospital, try to see Helen and talk to the doctors. Maybe something would come of it. In the morning, he took a day off, got on the bus, and went to the city with a heavy heart, wondering what he would find. What kind of state would Helen be in? The hospital was outside the city, in the woods. It was a gloomy building with bars on the windows. A guard was at the entrance. Where are you going? Tony showed him a note. To see a patient, Helena Krasnikova. Relative. He nodded. He was lying, but they wouldn't let him in otherwise. He showed his license. The names were different. What kind of relative? He wrote, her husband. We just got divorced. Divorced? Then you're not a relative. Go see the doctor on duty. The doctor on duty was a young, tired man. You're here for Helen Krasnikova? Who are you to her? Tony wrote, her husband. I want to know how she is. Her husband? Why didn't you visit her? She's been here for 6 months, and no one has come to see her. I didn't know where she was. I was looking for her. The doctor looked at him carefully. Can you speak? He shook his head. I see. Your wife was admitted in a terrible state. Nervous exhaustion, depression, a suicide attempt. Tony's breath caught in his throat. She said her husband was holding her captive and abusing her. but there were no documents. She said he took her passport. That wasn't me. It was someone else, her ex-husband. Someone else? Then why did she call you her husband? We were married. She took my last name. The doctor thought for a moment. I see. So the man who abused her called himself her husband. Tony nodded. And where is that man now? I don't know. The police are looking for him. I see. Well, you can see the patient. But not for long, and don't get her upset. He led him down a long corridor and stopped at room number 12. Helena, you have a visitor. Tony went into the room and almost cried. Helen was sitting on the bed, thin, pale with dull eyes. She wasn't the beautiful woman he had loved at all. Helen, he whispered. It was the first word he had spoken in years. She lifted her head, looked at him and didn't recognize him. Who are you? She asked in an indifferent voice. It's Tony. Your husband. My husband. Helen said, scared. No, I don't want to go back to my husband. He's bad. She ran to the window and pressed herself against the wall. No. Don't hit me, I'll be good. The doctor came into the room. That's enough. You see how she reacts. For her, the word husband is a trauma. Tony approached Helen slowly, carefully. Helen, don't be scared. It's me, Tony. Do you remember the wheat field? Do you remember Jenny? Jenny? She asked. Yes, Jenny, your daughter. She's waiting for you at home. Something flickered in Helen's eyes. A memory. Jenny, the little girl. Yes, she's all grown up now. She misses her mom. Helen started to cry. I remember. It was good. But then a bad man came. He won't come back. I'll protect you. Really? The doctor watched the conversation. This is interesting. She recognized you. That means you are a truly close person. Can I take her home? Not yet. She's not ready, but you can visit. Maybe your visits will help her recover. Tony started going to the hospital every week. He brought Helen treats and told her about home and Jenny. At first, she was scared of him, confusing him with Val, and would beg him not to hit her. But gradually her memory returned. The first visits were difficult. Helen would sit in the corner of the room, not lifting her eyes, flinching at every movement. When Tony offered her an apple or a cookie, she would recoil. No, she would whisper. I'm not hungry. Just don't hit me. His heart broke seeing her like that. What had Val done to her? How had he driven her to this state? The doctor explained the situation. She was basically in captivity for 6 months. He kept her in the basement of his house, beat her, starved her, and told her she was his property. How did she get out? The neighbors heard her screaming and called the police. When they arrived, she was unconscious. Val ran away. And where is he now? Unknown. He's wanted by the police. Every week, Tony patiently sat next to Helen, speaking to her in a low, gentle voice, telling her about their home and how much Jenny missed her. Do you remember how you taught her math? He would ask. How you baked pies? In Helen's eyes, something resembling a memory would sometimes flicker. Pies, she would repeat uncertainly. I used to bake pies. Very good ones with apples. Jenny asked you to teach her. Jenny. Helen would frown, remembering. A little girl with pigtails. Yes, you braided her hair every morning. I did, she would ask in surprise. Why? Because you loved her. The way a mother loves her daughter. The word mother had a magical effect. Helen straightened up and looked at him intently. I'm a mother. I have a daughter. Yes, you do. She's waiting for you at home. Where's home? In the country. We have a big house and a garden. You loved working in the garden? I did. What else did I love? Reading books, teaching children, and making borscht from your grandma's recipe. With every word, Helen came to life. Memories were returning bit by bit. A month later, she recognized him, looked forward to his visits, and would ask him to tell her about her old life. Tony, she said one day, I remember our house. I remember how happy we were. We'll be happy again. What if he comes back, that bad man? He won't. I won't let him. But I'm weak and he's strong. There are a lot of us. Me, you, and Jenny. We're a family. The word family had a great effect on Helen. She started to smile and cheer up. And Jenny remembers me? Of course she does. She asks every day when her mom is coming home. I want to go home, Helen said suddenly. I really want to go home. Soon, the doctor said. A little more time and you can. The doctors did notice an improvement. Helen was calmer, stopped flinching at loud noises, and started to take an interest in what was happening around her. Your visits are helping, the doctor said. She's calmer and more confident. When can I take her home? In a month or two. But she'll need to continue treatment at home and no stress. What if that man comes back? Then there could be a relapse or worse, a complete loss of her mind. Tony nodded. He would protect his wife like the apple of his eye. He started bringing Jenny to see Helen. At first the girl was scared. Her mom was different and strange. Dad, will Mom remember me? She will. Just talk quietly so you don't scare her. The first meeting was difficult. Helen looked at Jenny for a long time, not daring to approach her. You're my daughter? She asked uncertainly. Yes, Mom, I'm Jenny. Jenny, Helen repeated. That's a beautiful name. You gave it to me. I did. Helen was surprised. Why did you say your grandma was named that? Grandma? Helen thought for a moment. Yes, I think I remember. She was a kind woman. Mom, are you coming home? I want to come home if Dad says it's okay. Jenny looked at her dad. Dad, will you let her? Of course I will. We're a family. After that visit, Helen started to recover more quickly. The doctors were surprised. Family is the best medicine, they said. Do you see how much she's changed? And it was true, Helen was becoming more and more like her old self. She brushed her hair, paid attention to her clothes, and smiled. Tony, is Jenny doing well in school? She would ask. She's doing great. You taught her. I taught her? What did I teach her? Math, English. You're a teacher. A teacher, Helen would remember. Yes, I taught kids. I love to teach. And you'll teach again. They'll give you a job at our school. Really? Will I be able to? Did I forget everything? You didn't forget. It's like riding a bike. Once you learn, you never forget. Helen laughed. Her laugh was quiet and timid, but it was still a laugh. In January, the doctors allowed her to visit home. Helen could come home for the weekends. The first visit was emotional. Helen stood at the doorstep for a long time, not daring to go in. Is this our house? She asked. Our house, your house. Did I live here? You did. And you will live here. The house greeted her with warmth and coziness. Jenny had spent the whole day getting ready, cleaning, setting the table, and putting out flowers. Mom, come in, have a seat, her daughter said happily. Helen cautiously walked in and looked around. It's beautiful, she said. It's cozy. You made it cozy, Jenny said. You sewed the curtains and crocheted the rugs. I knew how to sew, Helen said. Surprised. You were very good at it. Do you want to see your work? Jenny brought out some embroidery and doilies. Helen looked at them with interest. They're beautiful and neat. Did I really make these? You taught me to. What else could I do? You could cook, make borscht, bake pies, and make meatballs. I want to try, Helen said. Maybe I'll remember. They went into the kitchen and started making borscht. Helen was unsure, but her hands remembered the movements. First you fry the onions, she would say. Then the carrots. That's it. Jenny said, excited. You remember? A little bit. It's like a fog. The borscht turned out delicious. At the table, Helen smiled for the first time in a long time. It's good to be home, she said. It's warm. This is your house, Tony said. You're the lady of the house. And I didn't forget how to be a homemaker. You didn't. You'll remember everything. Helen spent 2 days at home. She walked around the rooms, touched things, and remembered. By Sunday evening, she didn't want to leave. "Tony, can I stay?" she asked. "Not yet," the doctor said. "Gradually." "When can I stay for good?" "Very soon. Just be patient a little longer." Helen returned to the hospital sad but calm. The visits home gave her strength. "You know," she told the doctor, "I'm remembering things a little bit, but I'm remembering." "That's good," Helen said. "So I can be discharged soon, right? But can I handle it? What if I get sick again?" "You'll handle it. You have a family, a husband, a daughter. They'll help you." "Yes," Helen smiled. "I have a family." In early spring, Helen was discharged. Tony came for her with flowers and a new dress. "Tony," she cried when she saw him, "I'm going home. Home to you and Jenny. What if I get sick again?" "You won't get sick. We won't let you." "What if that man comes back?" "He won't." "What if he does?" "I'll drive him away." "You can do that? You're so kind. You don't know how to fight." "For my family, I'll learn anything." On the bus, Helen held his hand and wouldn't let go. She was afraid it was all a dream. "Is our house still there?" "It didn't burn down." "It's still there." Jenny had prepared a celebratory dinner. "Has she forgiven me for leaving?" "You didn't leave, you were taken." "But I could have fought more." "You were protecting us." "You went with him so he wouldn't hurt us." Helen cried with gratitude. He understood. He didn't judge her. At home, Jenny was waiting for them with a bouquet of wildflowers and a banner that read, "Welcome home, Mom." Helen ran to her. "My little girl," Helen hugged her. "You've grown so much." I waited every day. I'm not going anywhere again, I promise." "What if that guy comes?" "He won't. And if he does, Dad will make him go away." The house was filled with a woman's laughter and warmth again. Helen was still weak, tired quickly, and sometimes cried for no reason, but with each passing day, she became more like her old self. Tony guarded her like a fragile porcelain doll. He wouldn't let her do heavy work and wouldn't leave her alone for long. "Tony, I'm not an invalid," Helen would laugh. "I can make borscht myself." But he helped her anyway. He was afraid that stress would bring back her illness. "What if I forget everything again?" Helen would ask him at night. "You won't forget. And if you do, I'll remind you." "You'll remind me of everything?" "Everything. How we met, how we fell in love, how happy we were." "What if I become completely sick, not normal?" "I'll still love you, sick or well, young or old." "Do you promise?" "I promise." These conversations calmed Helen. She would fall asleep peacefully, knowing that no matter what happened, she wouldn't be abandoned. A month later, Helen got a job at the school. At first, it was part-time. The doctors didn't recommend a heavy workload. The school principal was skeptical. "Helena, are you sure you can handle it after being sick?" "I can. The children are my life. They'll help me." The kids loved her right away. She was patient, kind, and understanding. "Mrs. Miller, why didn't you work for so long?" a student asked. "I was sick." "But you're well now?" "Yes. I was sick with sadness. But love cured me." "Who cured you?" "My family, my husband, and my daughter." The kids nodded, not fully understanding, but feeling the truth in her words. Gradually, Helen took on a full workload. She taught classes, held extra lessons, and participated in meetings. "It's like she was never sick," her colleagues marveled. "She's so energetic and motivated." "Family gives me strength," Helen would reply. That summer, an event happened in their lives that could have ruined everything. Tony was working in the field when he saw a familiar car. Val. His heart sank. He'd come back. The car stopped at the house. Val got out and looked around. He had changed. He looked older, gaunt. Life had clearly been hard on him too. He knocked on the door. "Helen, I know you're home. Open up." Tony abandoned the combine and ran toward the house, but it was already too late. Helen had opened the door, saw Val, and fainted. "Putting on a show again?" Val laughed. "Get up, we need to talk." Tony ran up and grabbed Val's shoulder. Well, look who it is. Val turned around. The mute guy. He showed the knife in his pocket. I see my wife came back to you, but she's mine, you understand? My property. Tony stood between Val and Helen, who was lying on the porch. Get out, Tony said clearly and distinctly. Val was stunned. You can talk? Get out and don't you ever come near my family again. Your family? Val laughed. Helen is my wife, my ex-wife. You got divorced. We did. After you put her in the hospital. Val's face hardened. He clearly hadn't known the consequences of his actions. What hospital? The mental hospital. She was there for 6 months because of what you did to her. You're lying. I'm not. I have the records, the documents. At that moment, Helen woke up, saw Val and screamed, No, I don't want to. I won't go with him. She clung to her husband, trembling with fear. See, Tony said. You broke her. She's terrified of you. Nonsense. She's faking it. She's not faking it. She has a disability certificate for a mental illness. It was a lie, but a convincing one. Helen really did look sick. She was pale, shaking, with a panicked look in her eyes. A disability? Val was alarmed. Yes, from the trauma you caused her. You can check with the hospital. Val looked closely at Helen. She was cowering in the corner, covering her face with her hands. Don't hit me, she whispered. I'll be good. I won't cry. See, Tony continued. She thinks you're going to hit her again. What if I take her and get her cured? You can't. The doctors said any stress could lead to her completely losing her mind. Val thought about it. He wanted a healthy, beautiful wife he could show off to his friends, not a sick woman who needed constant treatment. So she's not normal now? Almost not normal. She's only calm with me and our daughter. And in bed. Val asked cynically. She's afraid of men. After what you did to her. This was also a lie. Helen was loving and affectionate with her husband, but Val didn't know that. Damn, he cursed. Why would I want a sick woman? Exactly. Why would you? Go find a healthy one. Val looked at the trembling Helen and understood. Taking her means getting a burden, not a wife. And who's paying for the treatment? I am out of my salary. It must be expensive. Very. The medicine, the doctors, the therapy. It all takes my entire paycheck. How long will the treatment last? The doctors say it could be for life. It depends on the stress. Val completely lost interest in Helen. A sick wife who needed constant care and was afraid of men wasn't what he wanted. Fine, he said. She's all yours, mute boy. Guess it's her fate to live with cripples. You're the cripple. Tony retorted. Aren't you a cripple? You can't talk. I'm not mute. I just kept silent for a long time. Why were you silent? I was grieving. My son died. Val shrugged. He wasn't interested in other people's sorrows. Anyway, you can have your psycho. I need healthy women. He got in his car and started the engine. Don't expect me to come back. I don't collect sick people. He drove away, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. Helen cried on her husband's chest for a long time. Tony, he won't come back again, will he? He won't. He definitely won't come back now. And you talked. You talked for me. I'll do anything for you. But why did you tell him I was sick? To scare him off. He wants healthy women who are easy to manipulate. What if he checks? What if he finds out I'm not disabled? He won't check. He's not interested. He'll find someone else. And if he finds someone else and hurts them too? That's not our problem. We protected our family. Jenny came home from school and saw her mom crying. What happened? That bad man came, her dad explained. But Dad drove him away. For good. For good. Yes. He understands that Mom doesn't love him. She never loved him. Never. Mom only loves us. Jenny hugged her parents. It's so good that we're all together. Right. Right, Helen agreed. The most important thing is to be together. After that incident, their life finally settled into a peaceful routine. Val never showed up again. Helen fully recovered. Ginny was an excellent student. Tony started talking again. First it was difficult, just single words, but gradually his speech returned. "Dad, why were you quiet before?" Ginny would ask. "My heart was hurting. I couldn't talk. But it doesn't hurt anymore. Mom cured you." "How did she cure you?" "With love. Love is the best medicine." Helen smiled shyly. She loved hearing her husband's voice in the house. "Tony, tell me about Jimmy," she would ask him in the evenings. "About our son." "What son?" Ginny didn't understand. "Dad had a son from his first wife," Helen explained. "Your brother. He died when he was little." Tony talked about the boy who had died at age 3 from an illness. He talked about how, after his death, the house had felt empty and his heart had turned to stone. Was he like Jenny? Very much. Just as kind and smart. I wish I had known him. He would have loved you. You're a miracle worker and you know how to make kids happy. Where is he buried? In the small town cemetery. The gravesite is overgrown. Can we go together and bring him some flowers? We can. He would have been happy. And it was true, Jenny blossomed beside her mom. She became confident, cheerful, and outgoing. The teachers at school were overjoyed. "Jenny has completely changed," they would say. "She used to be so quiet, and now she's a leader in her class." "Mom helps me," the girl would explain. "She knows everything and teaches me everything." Helen did spend a lot of time with her daughter, not just on school subjects but on music, art, and crafts. "I want her to grow up well-rounded," Helen would tell her husband, "so she can choose any profession she wants." "What profession do you want?" "It doesn't matter. The important thing is to love it, and for it to bring you joy. And if she wants to stay in the country, get married, and have children, that's good too, as long as she's happy." Ginny really did love learning, especially English and history. "Mom, can I become a writer?" she asked. "Of course you can. You'll write books? What will you write about? Life? People? Love? Can I write about our family?" "You can. It would be a beautiful story about how your dad found me in the field." "Yes, and about how we fell in love. And about how that bad guy came. You can write about that too. So people know that good always triumphs over evil." A year after Helen returned, their family grew. A son was born, a healthy, strong boy. "What should we name him?" Helen asked. "Jimmy," Tony replied. "In honor of our first son." "Won't it be too painful?" "No. It will be a joy. His name will live on." Ginny was thrilled to have a little brother. "Mom, he looks just like Dad," she rejoiced. "He does. He's just as serious. Can I read him stories?" "Of course you can. You're the older sister." The family was complete. A husband, a wife, and 2 children. The house was filled with the laughter and joy of children. "Tony," Helen would say to her husband, "do you remember how you found me in the wheat?" "I remember. You were lying there like a broken doll. And now I'm happy thanks to you, thanks to us. We're a family." "Yes, we're a family, the best family in the world." Tony looked at his wife and children and understood. Life had been a success. They had gone through so many trials but had kept the most important thing: love. "Helen," he would say in sign language when the children were asleep, "you are my most precious harvest." "What harvest?" "I found you in a field of wheat, like a seed that gives new life. And you, my savior, gave me a family, a home and happiness. We saved each other." "Yes. And now we will be happy forever." "Forever," Tony would agree. And they were truly happy, with a simple, quiet happiness that wasn't flashy but warmed the soul every day. The years flew by. Jenny grew up and went to college to study literature. She started writing stories, just as she had dreamed of as a child. "Mom, I wrote a story about us," she said one day. "Do you want to hear it?" "Of course we do." Jenny read the story about a mute combine operator who found a beaten woman in a wheat field. It was about how they fell in love, went through trials, and found happiness. It's beautifully written, Helen praised. But one thing isn't quite right. What? Dad wasn't mute. He just went silent from grief, and then he spoke again because of love. I'll fix it. Anything else? Nothing. Everything else is true. Little Jimmy grew up to be a copy of his father. He was serious, thoughtful, and kind. He loved machines and dreamed of becoming a mechanic. Dad, can I be a combine operator too? He would ask. You can. But first you have to do well in school. I will. Will you teach me how to drive the combine? I will. When you're old enough. Helen fully recovered from her illness. She became the principal at the school, earning the respect of her colleagues and the love of her students. Mrs. Miller, how do you do it all? The young teachers would ask. Work? Run a household and raise children? When you have a loving family, you have the strength for anything, Helen would reply. And what's the secret to happiness? Appreciate what you have. Don't chase after things you don't need, and love honestly. Tony became the foreman of the combine operators, a respected man in the county. He wasn't a man of many words, but every word he said was meaningful. Tony, do you regret talking again? Helen would ask. It was more peaceful to be quiet. No, I don't regret it. How could I regret something that helped me save my family? What if Val hadn't believed you and hadn't left? Then I would have had to fight him or go to the police. And you would have handled it. For you, I'm capable of anything. In the evenings, when the children were doing their homework, Tony and Helen would sit on the porch and look out at the fields. See that spot? He would point. That's where I found you. I remember. I thought everything was over. Turns out everything was just beginning. It was a good beginning, the best. They lived together for another 30 years, saw their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. Jenny became a famous writer, and Jimmy became the chief engineer in the district. We are such lucky people, Helen said in her old age. Everything in life worked out. Almost everything, Tony corrected her. What didn't work out? I wish we could live longer so we could have more time together. We have time. There's still a lot ahead of us. But there wasn't as much time as they thought. Helen died first. Her heart gave out. Tony lived for another year, missing his wife. Before he died, he wrote a letter to his children. Don't be sad for us. We lived a happy life. We met when we both needed saving, we saved each other, and we raised you. What more could we wish for? Remember, love is stronger than any trouble. If you love for real, no trial can scare you. Cherish your family. Appreciate what you have and be happy. They were buried next to each other in the country cemetery. On the gravestone, the words were carved. Here lie people who found each other in a wheat field and never parted again. In that field where Tony had once found Helen, the local authorities put up a small monument. The plaque read, "Here began a love story that became a legend." Jenny wrote a book about the story. It became a bestseller. People believed in true love, in the idea that good triumphs over evil. Were Grandma and Grandpa happy? The great-grandchildren would ask. Very happy, Jenny would reply, because they found each other at just the right moment. And we will find our happiness too. You will, if you are kind and don't give up at the first sign of trouble. The story of the mute combine operator and the woman from the wheat field became a legend in the area. It was told to children, remembered at weddings, and passed down from generation to generation, because there are some stories that are more important than the news. There is a love that is stronger than time. There is a goodness that comes back to you 100-fold. And there are meetings that change an entire life. If your heart is now filled with the belief in true love, write it down. Love will find a way through any trial. Share stories of how fate brought people together in the most unexpected moments. As I was writing this story, I thought about how many people pass by their own happiness because they're afraid of difficulties. Tony could have walked past the beaten woman in the field. Helen could have not trusted a stranger, but they chose kindness, they chose to help, they chose love, and they received their reward. A family that withstood all trials. Maybe somewhere near you there's also a person who needs help. And that help could be the beginning of a beautiful story. Because the strongest families are built not on passion, but on mutual support. The deepest love is born not from attraction, but from gratitude. And the greatest happiness comes to those who know how to give happiness to others.